Welcome to the Leaders Cafe, where leaders discuss the latest trends and issues in leadership, team building, and the future of organizations. Each week, we'll bring you engaging conversations with successful leaders who will share their insights, experiences, and strategies for creating effective teams, navigating change, and driving innovation. So sit back, relax, and join us for a virtual cup of coffee at the Leaders Cafe.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this fine world. And what an exciting week this is for sure. Got a lot of stuff working going on, and yeah. So Dan, how's your week going?
The week's been good. As you ultimately just trying to keep it on. With everything and stay positive and keep working. And as we keep building our businesses and doing planning for these events we're doing and doing this right here for you, bringing this to those who are watching, listening, etc. But I have a question that's burning in my head, and I don't understand why you're wearing that shirt. What's going on with that shirt?
This is a work of art. This is artwork on canvas. If you notice, it's like a pylon baseball. It's Cal State Fullerton baseball, and Cal State Fullerton back into the NC2A baseball playoffs, playing Texas A&M tomorrow, and yeah, so it's a
so you're deal. You're like supporting, you're like repping or something. It looked to me, it looked like a pastel Hawaiian or something. They were trying to pull off.
Pastel Hawaiian. Come on,
yeah, that's man. That's what it looked like. I mean, I understand now you're repping something. It makes a little bit more sense, but at the same time, it's like. It doesn't. That's not that flattering. I should say.
Tusks up, everybody. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, you know what? It's important. Two reasons why we're talking about Cal State Fullerton here today. One is, because I went there, and they're in the they're going to be. Hopefully, they can whip through this playoffs and go to the World Series again and win. And this shirt is representation of the couple of championships that Cal State Fullerton has, and of course the first one they got, right? The first one they got, and this is before my time there. But the announcers are going to go exactly. Cal State Fullerton is, in the World Series, and they were realistically an unknown school at that time in baseball. And the announcers go, Cal State who, right? Was the question, and so it kind of got me thinking. About imposter syndrome and like, what do we do when here we are, we're in this position, we're something we've been working on for a long time to get a position, and you get there and you go, oh my gosh, am I really qualified for this position? And you start doubting yourself, but there's steps to go through. And I know, Dan, you and I've talked about imposter syndrome for a bit. I know, like, when we first started doing the podcast with me 3 years ago now, we had to walk through your imposter syndrome. What do you believe causes imposter syndrome, and what did you do to kind of get through it?
It's good to know where the topic came from that you wanted to talk about today. But yeah, we've been talking about imposter syndrome for years, and yeah, for me it boils down to, I was dealing with this a lot back when me and you first started doing the podcast together, and I was doing my own podcast with Student as well, and I have that, am I qualified? Like, will people think that what I have to offer is worth it? That's kind of the mindset that goes behind it, and I actually looked it up when we were talking about, like, what's the definition of that? And it boils around to this, the feeling that you have as an individual, right? But it's more like a feeling of failure that you have. You've done something and you feel like you're failing at whatever you're doing. So, and I didn't realize that that's what it was. For me, there's two meanings there. One is you're failing at what you're really qualified to do, and you feel like you don't belong.
You feel like you're failing, not necessarily.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Okay. But there's others that say that the other feeling is that, like, who am I to be giving, advice or instructing or coaching or consulting? Who who's going to listen to me? So it's that self-doubt that you have. And it doesn't matter how qualified you are. are, or how great you are at something, or how experienced you are, it nags at you. I mean, we get it still. I mean, everybody. I mean, I've been doing this now for 3 years, as you mentioned. You've been doing it for a lot longer, and we can get 12 people that say that was great, that was great, that was great, and then you get one person say, "Who are you?" Like, some troll on there, and you're like, "Oh, it's so crazy how the negative is the one that really gets you. You ignore the positive.
Yeah.
You ignore the 12 people that said you did great, and that one person, that one troll that says that you didn't do great enough, or that you're not the right person, or you're full of it, and you're like, oh, it'll take it right out of you. I mean, it's one of those things too. It's just like your spouse, like you got everybody else looks at you one way. Your spouse can be the one that just, so it happens, and we gotta be mentally strong enough to overcome. That's what we talk about leadership. That's what leadership is, and moving forward, and so whether you're good at it or not, you keep doing it. You keep doing it. It doesn't take you a long time to get good at something. You know what I mean? So you can be very good at it. You can be kind of good, and you can be good, and you can be really good, and you can be great. So
Dan, how do you lead somebody, right? Like, and I hopefully, and I'm putting imposter syndrome on myself. Hopefully, when you're going through that imposter syndrome crisis, that our conversations and stuff helped you kind of go through that. But how do you lead somebody through that's having those feelings? Because it can be strong, right? I mean, it can be like super strong.
It's a matter of refocusing, because those feelings that you're putting, those negative feelings, or those emotions that you're going through, those thoughts that you're having, that's the stinking thinking, right? And it's so easy to follow that rabbit instead of following the one that you need to, right? So it's not a matter of saying, okay, you don't have those feelings, because you can't tell somebody not to have them, right? Mm-hmm. It's a matter of refocusing where their thoughts are, and where their feelings are, and where their concentration is. So when I'm coaching somebody, or when I'm talking somebody through something, or just ultimately giving somebody advice, it's to help them refocus where their mind is. What are you concentrating on? If you concentrate on the negative, that's where your mind's at. That's what you're going to reinforce, that thought, whether it's true or not. And so for me, it's like, okay, even if they made a mistake, because sometimes that happens, mistakes happen, and you might look foolish. So, okay, you did it. How do you not do that again? Let's refocus that. Let's repivot that. Let's pivot and move this direction on how we can improve. That's ultimately everything. And where we put our thoughts and our focus, that's where our attention is going to go.
Yeah.
And my goal is to just pivot that, to switch it, to refocus it. It's not to say they'll never have it again, because they will. I mean, I do all the time. Right. And it's a matter about refocusing it to know, like, okay, whatever happened here, you got to brush it off, because that was yesterday. This is right now and moving forward. And that's ultimately what we do there. And that's how I do it. And that's when our conversations, it was the same thing. It's like, you're going to, you're learning this, you're getting better, you're stumbling through on some of this stuff. You say a lot, like, okay. And then it's identifying it, and then working a way to get better at it, and I think just having those conversations helps.
I have this problem a lot with my students. What I mean, this problem is getting them to understand that they have the skills and the abilities to do what I'm asking them to do. And that's what we do as teachers, right? Is we guide our students through those rough patches. And I tell them all the time, I learn as much from you all as hopefully you get from me, and that together we're going to go through this process. And that's helped me take it from the classroom into the guiding people who are employed or working for me in a volunteer capacity through these problems as well. And then, not saying that you should treat your employees like students, or students like employees, but there's that coaching ability to go through and say, hey, yes, we all feel this way. And there's even this like concept of like fake it till you make it, or you name the little saying that's out there. Everybody's going to go through that process. Now I'll tell you a personal story. I was invited to, when I say invited, I was told to be there, to a meeting. And I walk in the room, and it's all the chiefs, the police chiefs, and the sheriff is there, and all the brass. Everybody has big stars on their shoulders, right? And we're looking at doing some planning process to do some training countywide and stuff. And I walk in the room and I'm presenting to these people, and I'm like, who the hell am I to be in this room to talk to this group of people? And but yeah, I was the subject matter expert, and they all put their eyes on me. And I was like, I'm a little nervous when I got up there, took a sip of water, and went through the PowerPoint presentation that I had set for them and whatnot. And I sat down, and my chief put his hand on my back. He said, "Great job." During the entire time, I don't even know what I said, to be honest with you, because like I was so nervous and so afraid that I was like going to look like a fool up there. And but no, I mean, we had the expertise to be there, right? And they all appreciated what you say and what you do. So you got to remember, there's this concept of who is the expert in the room, right? And it's the person who knows like 5% more than the rest of the room, right? So if you can get yourself as the expert in that one particular topic, whatever it is, and 5% more than everybody else in the room, you're the expert, and everybody's going to look towards you for the answers, and you aren't the imposter. You are the person who they're looking towards. And I think that's what I like to tell the people who work for me and that I'm guiding through this, is like, you are the person who needs to be. You are the person who needs to be in that room at that time. And I know it's going to feel like it is, but go out there and do a bang up job, and then you become world champions like the Cal State Fullerton baseball team did.
Yeah, good way to push that in again. I think a lot of it too, it deals with understanding the individual. So when it comes to imposter syndrome, it's always going to be rearing its little head somewhere. It's always going to be, but it's a level of building up yourself, right? So that's one of the reasons why I pivoted from doing what I was doing to doing what I'm doing now, and as it relates to mentoring and leading and coaching, because it's really about developing people, right? And you want to bring someone who really wants to develop themselves and help them that way. And not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to be someone who develops themselves and believes in personal growth and continuing to learn and be better. But those who do is those who are like, okay, if you want to, if you're serious about it, here's how we can do it, and walking them through that, because it builds that level of the confidence that goes along with it. And not to say that confidence is never going to be shaken, because it's always right on the edge, man. There's people out there that they're so far off the edge that they shouldn't be, and then there's those that are completely over the edge because they feel they just let that thought destroy them, period. And you got those that are just walking that ledge and teeter either way, and it could be disastrous. You go too far confident, you're cocky. You go too far with lacking confidence, then nobody's going to look to you for when you could really be helping them. And it's a level of that development and staying on that ledge, staying right in where you need to be, and that takes work. I mean, it takes balance. It takes time.
So do you believe that the imposter syndrome then is more of a confidence issue, or is it more of a I don't deserve this, or is it both?
I think it's a combination. So there's the I don't feel like I'm qualified to tell someone else what to do or how to do it, or
confidence,
or to teach them anything, right? Okay. Who am I to step into a room and become someone else's teacher? And then there are those that they are fully qualified. They have everything, but they're trying to do it, but they don't feel like people are really reacting to them. So they have that confidence that they know what they're doing, but the way that they're going about things isn't getting the attention that they feel that it should have, and that shakes their confidence because they're not getting that attention, or that say they're a consultant, brand new consultant out the door. They've been doing it for 20, whatever they're doing for 20 years. They're putting themselves out there. Yeah, I'm a consultant. This is the business I'm in. This is what I can help you with. And nobody's taking them up on their offers, right? They're fully qualified. They know they're qualified. They've been doing it forever. Right. Nobody's taking them up on their offer. That shakes their confidence. Like, should I be doing this? Like, but then there's those who are just, they're completely new. They're experienced, but they have that mentality that everybody else is more experienced than them. So why should anybody listen to what I have to say, what I have to teach, what I have to offer? They're better than me. And they have that mentality. It's all area of keeping that right there.
We have a question, or I mean more of a comment here, and unfortunately, just the way the system's working right now, I can't see all the names. So says imposter may be a bad term, and it isn't like stolen valor, quote unquote, but it's early into a career. I have to disagree with you on that, because it's not necessarily my drill sergeant said you're wrong. The idea though is not necessarily early into your career. The concept of imposter syndrome can be at any stage of your career. I mean, like you could be the appointed to the director of FEMA, for instance, with all that time in, and you go, oh my gosh, do I really belong in this position? That's what that is. It's almost like that overwhelming. There was the movie called The Candidate with Robert Redford. I don't know if you guys, the younger crowd here, probably has never seen this movie, but I'm a political junkie, and it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And he goes through this process. He's a young guy. He's running for Senate for state of California, and he wins. And at the end of the movie, he kind of, and I'm going to paraphrase it, obviously, he sits on the edge of the bed and he looks at his campaign manager and he kind of goes, well, now what? Right? It's like you get to this point to where you're doing well at everything. You're qualified. You've gone through school. You've gotten your degrees. You've gotten 10, 15 years of experience under your belt. You apply for the position, you become the chief of the police department, or the mayor, or the city council member, or whatever you're trying to do, the pinnacle of your career. And then you go, oh man, now what? It's lonely at the top. Can I do this? Am I the right person for this? And I think that's really what we're talking about here when it comes to imposter syndrome. And it can happen to anybody at any time, at any point of their career. So the one, and I'll tell you personally, again, we'll go back to personal. When I'm thinking of imposter syndrome for myself, when I'm feeling like, well, why am I here? Do I belong here? I actually have a few people. Dan's one of them. Brian Colburn, you guys have all met, is another one. My wife. I talk to them about like those feelings that I'm having, because they are true feelings. You're like, holy smoke, Tony Fogarty on here. He says, what a great topic. I must have had that feeling many times in a working week. I mean, Tony, he's a PhD candidate, and he's very experienced in the fire world. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, and so same thing. He kind of feels that we feel that. And sometimes I think those of us that go through that imposter syndrome, I don't want to say care too much. That's the wrong term to say. But I think that we care so much about being good at what we do that that's when self-doubt crawls in to our.
I think more of that, it's about being seen as being good at what we do. Imposter syndrome. Look at the definition itself. It says the fear of being found out to be phony or ungenuine. Right. So like to get up there and say, start spouting stuff off, and you're the expert, and people start asking you questions, and you can't answer the questions, and you don't know the answers. Like you don't know what you're talking about. To be the fear of being found out. And now that's not the case when we're talking about, do you have imposter syndrome? Because that's the exact opposite. Because you are the expert. You are the person that everybody needs to hear from and see, and it has the answers to those questions. But you have that feeling that you're not. You have that feeling. What
right?
What if? Who am I? Like you have that self-doubt. And it's that feeling of appearing that way to somebody else, and that gnaws at you, it gnaws at your mind. Like, am I really, like, should I really be the one up here, giving this speech or teaching this lesson or doing this consulting or writing this plan? It just is a feeling that you get of self-doubt.
I'm bringing baseball back in this conversation again because, Cal State Fullerton is going to the World Series. No, it's about this. I always think about in athletics, right? You have the guys who are at the top of their game. They're in the professional realm, and when that little bit of self-doubt creeps into their head, their game can just fall apart. Tiger Woods happened to him. It happened. I mean, Tiger Woods, right? One of the best golfers that ever played the game, had to go to this time when he was just doing terrible, and had to go to a sports psychologist to kind of work through his stuff. If you ever watch Ted Lasso, there's a whole episode about this where they bring in, or a whole couple episodes where they bring in the sports psychologist. They called it IPS. You should really watch that. And I think that really kind of brings in the concept of imposter syndrome, where you go, do I belong on this field with all these other players? And even though you're probably one of the best or one of the most knowledgeable when it comes to academics and when it comes to what we do as leading. And I loved, if you guys have never seen Ted Lasso on Apple TV, find it, borrow somebody's account if you can. Sorry, Apple, don't sue me for that. And watch it. Go to their house, I guess I should say. Go to your friend's house and watch it at their house. Don't borrow their account. That's against the law, I guess, or something, against the terms. So go watch this show. And there's a lot of great leaders lessons that are in that show. But the one specifically dealing with the imposter syndrome and the IPS, as they call it, I think that one right there will really put it to bed of what this really means. And it is. It's going through, and Ted Lasso gets this soccer player, called, England, so it's football player, whatever, the soccer player, to get through those and have the understanding that they are good at what they do and that they do belong in that field. And as leaders, that's what we have to do to get people through that imposter syndrome, is encourage them with action and words and saying, look at you, Dan, you're good at what you do. You're knowledgeable. You're in this room because you're supposed to be here. You can share your information that you have, or you're going to be able to get this done, this job done, because you have the information, and not as the drill sergeant says that you're wrong. I'm going to go the opposite way with this. And I'm going to be a leading coach and say, Daniel, you're right, and you can do this, and I got your back. And does that take away the imposter syndrome feeling? I don't know, but does it help you get through it? I would think so.
Well, I think what helps you get through it is as if it's me being the coaching, I have that belief in them, but do they have that belief in themselves? So I have to, like I said, I have to switch that thinking, pivot that thinking. I have to refocus them to a part where that self-doubt is now fading and their self-confidence is coming out, and they have that belief in themselves. I can't give them the belief. I can't give that to them. They have to have it themselves. My goal, I can have belief for them. I can have belief in them, but my goal is to instill that into their own thinking, right? They have to feel that in them. So they got to have that self-confidence, that belief to say, you're right, I got it. Thank you. Because there's some people you can tell them how great they are all the time, and they still are Eeyore, right? Oh
yeah, no, absolutely.
You don't tell me, So it doesn't matter how much you put into them or time or investment that you have, they're not going to change. And then there's those that are like, down for they got those peaks and valleys, right? And they're down, and you got to be able to find a way to lift them up and get them back on track. You can't climb that hill for them and go back to a peak, but you can get them into a position where they can work themselves back to that peak. And that's what our role is as a leader, as in leadership, is to keep those individuals in healthy, to be able to work themselves to the peaks that they need to be on. And when we see them hitting those valleys, refocus them to get them back on track. The peaks and valleys are going to come. They're there. We got to get them back on track to get back to the peak.
Right. And there's this thing where we talk about specifically as leaders, and the concept of emotional intelligence, or EQ. And I think that as leaders, and we have to work on ourselves, obviously, at this, and really have that emotional intelligence to be able to recognize when one of your team members, or whether it's a coworker or if it's somebody who works for you, is in that space, and to be able to help them recognize that and work through that. And there's various different, exercises and things that you can do. And I hate to send people to do, like, oh, let's do, team building exercises based upon, this problem, right, with imposter syndrome. But if you're working those out now as a leader, right, kind of go through, pretend that somebody has this problem, and kind of work through your question and answers with your person who you're working things out with. When you tackle this issue in real life, it becomes easier as well. And so you, as a leader, have to recognize what it is to have imposter syndrome, whether you had it yourself, which I'm sure everybody here in this room has had it, or how you work through with your staff. And I think, Dan, you're right. There is, we can never tell the person how to feel, right? And we can't make them feel. But at the other hand, is we can always put that hand out to help them up, right? You know, if you think about climbing mountains, you know, the guy who gets onto the top of the peak first has to reach his hand down to help the other person up. And that's what we need to do as leaders, is to be able to be there to help those person to get out of those valleys, whether we're pushing them up or pulling them up. But one way or the other, we got to get them out of that valley. And I think that's the critical aspect of what we do to help people get out of that imposter syndrome feeling.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of it has to do with knowing that we've been there, we've learned from it, we've worked our way out of it, and we can help them do the same thing. We can give them the tools and the resources that they need. I mean, you go back to let's go to your mountain climbing, analogy. Yeah, if you're ahead of somebody, you're putting the anchors in, right? And you're telling people, here's your anchor spot. Get them to that next anchor spot so they can anchor in. If you get to the top, you're helping them up. You're helping them finish up. So, and if you are behind them, you're when you're looking up and you're finding those anchor spots, and you're helping making sure that they're moving forward so that you can move forward as well. So
right.
There's that, it's just that understanding. Okay, where are we in our journey, so that I know how much, to give you, what tools and resources you need, how much support you need, how much guidance, how much encouragement. All that stuff is it's different varies from everybody. It's all individualized. If you might be able to walk into a room for somebody and say, you're really good at what you do. I don't really have a lot to tell you. All I can tell you is you're doing great. And he's like, yeah, and then you got others, you can tell them, you're amazing. You're awesome. You're sweet. You're expert in the field. And they're like, I'm not sure yet. You're going to find those, everybody's different. Everybody's they're varied on the approach that you have to take with somebody, right? And how much effort and how much investing you have to do in them. How many tools and resources you have to give them, how much support and encouragement you have to give them. It all varies, and you have to watch that as a leader to say, I need to spend more time with this individual. This person's doing really great. I can spend less time with this person. It's a give and take throughout the whole process, and really understanding your team, understanding the people you're working with, and understanding yourself.
So I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we're getting here close to the end, and we'll leave it here. You mentioned earlier that there's the cockiness side of it. Is that the opposite of imposter syndrome? Because I always think the opposite of imposter syndrome is the person who thinks that they know everything, and I don't want to say humble, but aren't humble enough to realize that they don't know stuff. And I think that's just as dangerous as somebody who, or maybe even more so, than somebody who has imposter syndrome. What do you think of that?
Well, the issue there, I mean, if we're talking about definitions, I mean, imposter syndrome is the complete opposite of what is reality, right? So to say to have that imposter syndrome in myself is to feel like I'm not qualified when I am. Someone who is feeling like they are qualified when they're not, they are an imposter, because they're acting as if they know what they're doing and they do not. Imposter syndrome is the complete opposite. You feel you're not worthy, you feel you're not qualified, but you are. You don't have that belief in yourself. Like, you have that self-doubt. Right. Those who feel like are out there giving advice when they're not qualified in any sort of way and pretending that they are, that is to go back to that comment, that stolen valor, right? They're acting like they did something and they're doing something they're not doing, that they know something they don't know. So they're just imposters flat out. You want to expose them, right? An imposter, someone who's feeling imposter syndrome, feels scared that they're going to be exposed as that when they're not going to be, because they are the real thing, but they have that self-doubt in themselves, and that's where the difference is.
It's a good way to put it. All right, well, we're going to leave it there. There's a lot more to talk about when you think about imposter syndrome, and we could go forever, but Yeah, I'm going to be doing a little bit more work on the imposter syndrome stuff. Put some articles up at the EMN network at Substack.com. So keep an eye out for those things, and I think that it will be a good topic to talk about. Hey, so Dan, what are you consuming right now? What are you reading? What have you been doing?
Oh man, it's so much to tell. I mean, I'm always rereading books. One of the new books that I just picked up. Let me see if make sure I get it's right here actually. It's called. It's a very short read. I start reading. It's called Terrific 5 Stars. It's customer service. How to be better at meeting and being a leader to those who consume you. Basically, like this, how to be better at giving advice. How to be better at understanding what people need and then giving them that. So this book here is called Terrific 5 Star Customer Service. Great book. And then I'm also reading. I got a daily reader that I do. That's literally a 365 reader that gives a daily quote and some little bit of tools to go behind it. And it's called the John Maxwell 365.
Oh yeah.
And I actually give this out as gifts. This is a great gift to give. You give somebody a daily read like this, and it's amazing. So these are the two right now that are on my desk that I consume on a daily basis.
Nice. Yeah, I'm doing two things. Jeff Sledgemuch has a new book that's coming out in September, and I get was honored to be asked to pre-read it, so I'm getting that. I can't really give too much information on that one, but it's going to be, when it comes out in September, it's going to be a must-buy for everybody. More information coming that way for that particular book. And I am actually rereading Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And Fountainhead?
Fountainhead, I've never read it.
Oh yeah, it's really interesting, specifically on the political side of things. It's an interesting read for sure, and but every once in a while I like to read the classic stuff that you read back in college, and that's my political philosophy book for the summer. So it's a 750-page book, So I'm reading some but it's an interesting story. It's about architecture and stuff like this, and so I think that if you like to see the psychological aspect of how society runs, that's what that book's about. And so those are the books I'm reading right now. But well, dude, it's 2 minutes over our time. We're gonna have to say goodbye, but not forever, just for a little bit. And I'm gonna take you guys out with a very, very, very special song